back channel like
Oh,
hours
you
ago.
did?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is the same
Josh.
problem going on in lots of airports around Europe, especially, where they're just saying we're understaffed, we're understaffed, we're understaffed, we're understaffed. I just spoke to somebody here at my place who's is an Irish guy who's a property developer, and he says in Ireland you cannot find construction workers of any kind. That he literally had somebody tell him he had already prepaid, like during COVID, before inflation kicked in or whatever, for this project. And because of how prices have increased since that contract was made, only 9 months ago, the guy told him to go fuck himself because it's like the this sue me if you have to or whatever, but we're not doing this job at this rate from 9 months ago because we have more demand than we could ever do. And he said there's just a massive shortage of labor available.
Tyler,
Yeah.
what's up? Hey, it's really funny what you're talking about the airports because as the saga continues with Schiphol, it's now called like the notorious airport because the lines are just incredibly, incredibly long, and people are just now they're charging for a meat service, a meet and greet service or something like that, where it gives you like you pay like something like 165, 175 euros per family, and they like escort you straight in, like like get you to security, get your bags in, get everything within like an hour's time. Where there are people that are waiting on lines for 4 hours to get their flight, and some people have even missed their flights, and some have even have had their half their legs canceled on the flights as well. So it's just a big old, yeah, shit show, shit storm, more like it for sure. And not only that, Tyler, we're getting 40 degrees in Holland this week.
The Irish guy just told me 10 minutes ago that it's 39 in Paris right now.
Yeah, it's madness. They're gonna call there's gonna be like 2 days or 3 days next week that it's gonna be like between 35 and 40. And let's just say we've started to see the effects of the heat by the river where uh, it's not illegal to go topless.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
in Dutch. Yeah. So for our non-metric friends, 39 Celsius is 102 degrees in Paris, which and apparently Amsterdam's getting close or whatever. So they're having unprecedented heat. But and some people in Southern California are saying to themselves, "Yeah, big whoop de doo." Well, that part of the world doesn't have air conditioners, is what needs to go through your mind. So uh, it's a whole
Oh
other story.
yes, our co-founder in Paris have no air conditioning. That's right. That's what he said. Hey, by the way, David reported that Texas was 41 degrees yesterday, right? Is it not?
It was 41 on both Saturday and Sunday. Yesterday it was 106. I think that translates to like 40.9 or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're warm.
Well,
You
I
know,
got you all. I can
Phoenix
only
was
tell you for Fahrenheit, but it was
115.
118 in Las Vegas. So yesterday.
yeah,
So
Ken and
It
Francine
was
are
100.
laughing. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's 118.
we're like you got
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
on
yeah. But
us.
when it's like that here, it is actually still what you guys would call humid. So just it's
I
different than
know that. That's
your
why I
front
live
heater.
here. I'd rather be in 120 degrees here than 90 degrees where in Texas or Houston or something. I've been to
And
Houston.
people are
It's a
always
dry heat.
asking me why I stay in Phoenix, and this is why I stay in Phoenix because it is a dry heat. And I've been in other cities like New York where it's been, in the 90s and felt much worse than it
Yeah.
feels in Phoenix.
But dry
It's a,
heat is good, right? If
humidity.
it's not humid, you don't perspire so much, right? So you don't have
right.
to take showers so many times.
It's a shit show. As
Rather than
It's a
We've
shit
gone
show.
full circle now.
well, it
It's
comes
a
full
shit
circle.
There
show,
seems to be
Tyler.
a
It's
pattern of shit show going on right now.
Well, all of this comes into your food, water, and energy because if you do live in an area, so I grew up in Denver, and the homes now have air conditioning. When I was a kid, they didn't. They built a two-story home with a ceiling fan in the attic, and you could draw in the cool air at night. If the whole earth is heating and humans still want to be comfortable, that's going to draw a bunch of all these refrigerators cooling our houses, known as air conditioners. It's going to cause the load on these grids to go crazy. So we
solar,
should factor in
solar,
the whole thing.
solar. Solar, solar,
It
solar.
no, but you're talking about the latitudes that didn't get the kind of solar. Ben, maybe you could talk to this. Like, it's not like just you can solve it in just with one thing. It's going
There
to be a
was an
lot
innovation with
more.
compressor technology very recently. So I think it was one of those DARPA projects where DARPA said we needed better compressors, and through some collaboration with the universities, they actually developed a superior compressor so that, in particular, for air conditioning, is going to reduce the load on the grid. So it's innovation happens everywhere all the time.
Okay. So for anyone who missed the first story of the day, like myself, it's from Wired that Twitter employees
Tyler,
say,
before that, you need to sound the air horn, Tyler.
Yeah,
"Oh,
we missed the
oh
air
my
horn.
God,
We
thank you,
missed that.
Jesus, we almost broke tradition for. Wow, that was close. That was scary. Here we go.
Cheryl
Woo!
doesn't have a copy.
It's a shit show in here. Okay, so the first story is from Wired. It says Twitter employees say it's a shit show internally, exacerbated by weak leadership and lack of support amid targeted harassment from outside the company. Days after the deal to buy Twitter fell apart, fed up employees say they are being kept in the dark. Okay, there you go. So there's a daughter or a sister article, or a somewhat related article from Bloomberg. It says Twitter's lawyers call Elon Musk's deal termination, quote unquote, invalid and wrongful, and say Twitter, quote unquote, breached none of its obligations under the agreement. Sounds like a case for Judge Wapner and the People's Court. So time will tell how that plays out. The next is also from Bloomberg, somewhat related. A look at Twitter's options as Musk tries to back out, such as suing for expectation damages, which may be capped at $1 billion, or suing for specific performance. So they're having some lawyers chime in with their thoughts about how this will play out. And then the next big topic is also from Bloomberg. Liquidators say they can't find Three Arrows Capital founder, oh no, Kyle Davies and Zhu Su, and seek to subpoena them to prevent the dissipation of the fund's assets. The founders of bankrupt crypto hedge fund Three Arrows Capital haven't been cooperating in the firm's liquidation process. Oh boy. Now you're just being you've just announced to the world that you're a bunch of shady bastards. Is what you just did there. Because previously there was some, at least from the outside, plausible deniability that they were victims of the whole Luna thing, and that they just over leveraged, and they just got themselves on the wrong side of a deal, and that's unfortunate, but it happens to the best of people. But when you start running from the cleanup after the fact, when you don't stick around to help clean up after the party, then you're just being some garbage. So the next is from the information. In an internal post, Meta Vice President of Remote Presence and Engineering named Meher Saba instructed managers to identify and move to exit poor performers. Oh, that's the one I shared in our little private back channel earlier, where I found a screen. There was a lot of people reporting this one. The Washington Post version of this headline says, in leaked memo, Facebook tells managers low performers don't belong. Now, I could be totally wrong, but did we not have some tech bro pop in here like 2 weeks ago saying that all the tech companies are going to be cutting their weakest team members because now's the time to do that, and that even their investors are telling them to do that, and all the founders are looking at each other and wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now's the time to cut your weak team members. Did I imagine that, or was there some very, very handsome elderly tech bro come in here and make that point that everyone's going to be doing that, including Facebook? And then we saw Mark Zuckerberg a week ago say internally, we're going to be cutting back, and maybe not everybody should be here, and we're okay with that. And I said at the time, they are going to cut the weak people off the team, Everyone's going to do it. Everybody, 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 everybody. So,
Tyler, you keep
yes,
referring to this elderly tech bro. I
yeah,
think he's having memory problems. Maybe we'll call him senile.
okay. The senile tech bro.
Tyler,
There you go.
Tyler, thank you for all
Tom.
the compliments about me. Thank you for all the compliments about me.
Yes. Well, you're wearing a hat. I don't know if you're balding like I am.
No, I
So,
am. Trust me, because not just them, like a lot of the major financials, which technically you can call tech companies, are getting ready to do a 5% cut across the board.
okay. Here we go. Next up. The
I
F.
thought they all did it already.
I know. This seems a little. Facebook's kind of late to the party on the cutting the weak team members, yeah? So,
Yeah, I mean, everyone did it like 2 weeks ago.
yep, I know what you mean. And boy, did we see every day there was 5 new headlines of more teams cutting. And I kept saying, this is pointless exercise. It's like saying, you know, these people are eating food every day. So the next is the FTC says it will crack down on tech companies' illegal use and sharing of highly sensitive data and false claims about data and anonymization or anonymization. Because we've all seen many stories over the past year here of Google claiming to not be a bad actor with regard to user data and everything else, and then oh shoot, oh it was a mistake. We told Carl in section 532b/79 DQ to not do that anymore. Oh, Carl, that bonehead. We've taken care of him, and sorry about that. Is our Google Assistant listening again, even though the microphone says off? Sorry about that. True, our bad, everybody. And after a dozen times of doing that, as has happened, and it's Google. I'm not picking on Google. It's Google and Amazon and Facebook and the whole lot of them continue. And the most recent Google example, just to give you an example, was about making it hard for you to kind of remove yourself of your being tracked in Google Maps. And you think you've removed yourself from being tracked from Google Maps. In reality, you haven't. And there was another one where you want to remove yourself from being followed around the web with cookies and whatnot. They buried the settings, and they buried the settings so far, and then they had to make it more visible. So they made it more visible. When they made it more visible, people started opting out, and they were opting out at such a rate that they said, "We can't have this. Go back to burying that setting," and that was caught in an email. So they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar with why they're intentionally burying those settings, 5 layers deep in the system preferences, because they can't risk everybody turning that off because it's core to their business as an ad network. They need to collect that sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data. They just can't help themselves. You hear that sound? Did you hear that sound? That's the sound of them
Yep.
sucking on your sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data. There's a lick in
So,
them lips.
article to respond to that, article released yesterday, and I don't have any internet, so I can't pin the article. Article has released a sovereign cloud for each country in the EU that specifically allows the data to comply with all of the various different regulations. They already had a couple of different clouds for countries that had special needs. Let's call them special needs countries, Germany and Spain, I think. But now they have more. Um, it's called Sovereign Cloud, I think. I'll try to get it without internet, and send it to you. But I'll see if I can.
Okay, thank you, friend. The next one is that the FTC says it will crack down. We did that next. After scrutiny, TikTok will pause a privacy update in Europe, originally due for July 13th, tomorrow, whereby it will stop asking users for consent to be tracked to receive ads. Holy shit. How I don't make up the sequence of these stories, as Cheryl and others know. How is it that this is right on point about another ad network based social network that is, playing games with the data and the user privacy and all of this and the EU regulation. And this is just, here we are, 2020. It took till 2022 for the governments to realize what all these big tech companies were doing with your sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data. And now they have to play, hide the salami with, all of their intent. And it's just this crazy game because they can't give it up because they're hooked. They're hooked on your sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data. They just cannot help themselves. And even at the risk of being fined billions of dollars by the EU and other regulators, they can't help it. They're going to play crazy games and risk getting shut down in some cases. So anyway, it says TikTok will pause the privacy update in Europe. What is that about? What is the privacy update in Europe? It doesn't really matter. Suffice to say they were trying to screw you because they want your sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data. But the headline is that it's paused. So TikTok has agreed to pause a controversial privacy policy update in Europe, which has been due to happen tomorrow and would have meant that TikTok stopped asking users for their consent to be tracked, to receive targeted advertising. I can't make this shit up. I literally was just talking about this before this story. The Irish Data Protection Commission, TikTok's lead privacy regulator for the European Union General Data Protection Regulator, GDPR, said the pause follows engagement between the Oversight Office and the tech giant yesterday. Quote, further to engagement with the DPC yesterday, TikTok has now agreed to pause the application of the changes to allow for the DPC to carry out its analysis. TikTok has been contacted for comment. While we engage on the questions from stakeholders about our proposed personalized advertising changes in Europe. That's their favorite word, personalized. It's personalized too. Well, how the hell are we supposed to personalize it if we don't get all that sweet, juicy data? We're just doing that for your benefit, so that we can send you the best cat videos you've ever seen. Because your cousin Sarah, she likes different cat videos. In fact, she likes dog videos. And how are we supposed to know that you like cat videos unless we get access, to your facial your face print, your voice print, everything that you say with your microphone. We might even take photos of your face and analyze the expression on your face to determine the emotion at all given times, and yada, 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 yada. Anyway, so the EU is going to do this, and we'll know a year from now when the EU is done doing their little investigation. We'll see what they decided. And in the meantime, TikTok's going to find a workaround that's going to allow them to continue their shenanigans while the EU regulators go about their 1 year, 2-3 year investigation into what should be what in China would be a 10-minute investigation. So the next one is Twitter rolls out its unmentioning feature to all users on all devices. That's everybody, y'all. That's all y'all. Letting users remove themselves from conversations that include their Twitter handle. They did it. You can untag yourself now, everybody. So, when that idiot from high school tags you yet again in another stupid photo that you want nothing to do with, and you can't bring yourself to tell little Bobby that you're not interested in being tagged like that anymore, Twitter's got your back, everybody. You can now just click that unmention button. Well done, Twitter.
Hasn't Facebook had this for 10 years?
I hope so. So our friend Jane Wong in Hong Kong, who's renowned for finding these upcoming features, says, in case of targeted harassment, I'm worried unmentioning, similar to blocking, might entice some abuse to escalate. Oh, okay. Well, she happens to have to deal with a lot of that nonsense, unfortunately. A lot of people do, and I empathize with everyone who has jackasses that they engage with on social media. And she's probably right. untagging yourself will likely cause some people to lose their marbles because 5% of people are broken, lost souls, and they shouldn't probably be engaging with everybody on the open internet in an unconstrained way. If only there was a way to vet those people out from having full access to the platforms. So before they sign up, um, like some kind of an evaluation, some kind of tests. Like think of it like a CAPTCHA, but can figure out if you're a psychopath, like a very advanced CAPTCHA to determine if you're a psychopath or a sexual predator or what have you. The next up is from MIT Tech Review. Big Science, an effort by more than 1,000 researchers. An NLP startup called Hugging Face releases something called Bloom, an open access multilingual large language model, bigger and better than GPT-3. So now you've got an open source, open access version, because you've got both Google and Facebook and OpenAI all try. And what's the Chinese one? Cheryl or BB? There's a Chinese team who claims to have an even better one than GPT-3 as well, with a bigger data set. Anyways, Ben, you recall? We read that headline a month ago or so.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, but
I don't remember the
it's a
name. Yeah.
yes, it's a declaration, so there's no proof yet.
right, but they're all in a race to build out larger and larger and larger sets of data to train these models and large language models, so that they can have very realistic conversations and eventually do the Turing testing, which so that dude at Google who said this thing's turning sentient, although that was I think even he would admit now that he was just trying to raise awareness on the issue. And in fact, he basically did do exactly that in an interview when they asked, why did you do this? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He just felt like the whole topic of AI needed more public engagement, it turns out. He's quoted as saying. So he didn't actually believe it was sentient himself. So he's kind of a shady dude. He's an AI ethicist who doesn't mind lying. Ethicists who lie. I'll take ethicists who lie for 500, Bob. The guy lied to get people's attention to the issue of ethics in AI. So anyway, but there's a whole bunch of teams trying to improve AI and NLP and build very convincing bots is what it comes down to, because that's going to be huge business to people who can build very convincing bots. If especially in this time of labor shortages that we're going through, you could have every phone call could lead to a bot that eventually potentially could even outperform most humans. I wouldn't doubt it in our lifetime. So anyway, a lot of progress. Next up, Xpeng Robotics. An affiliate of Chinese electric car maker Xpeng raises $100 million as it aims to commercialize household robotics in the next few years. Oh shit, were we just talking about replacing labor with automation? Here's a Chinese outfit with raising $100 million to bring robots to your households in 2 years. Xpeng Robotics on Tuesday said it raised $100 million to commercialize household robotics in the next 2 years. Last year, they launched a rideable four-legged robot unicorn as its first product. And you were wondering if you should take this company seriously, and now you're thinking, God damn, these guys know what they're doing. They're building a what? A four-legged, you heard it right, rideable unicorn robot. And tell me you didn't want a unicorn when you were growing up. Now, tell me straight to my face, Cheryl, that you didn't want a unicorn when you were growing up. Of course you did. And that's why these guys deserve that $100 million. And I can't wait to see what they do with it.
I want a unicorn setup.
You still want a unicorn. You're a full grown adult and you want to stroll around downtown Tokyo on a unicorn. Am I right?
You're not wrong.
But 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 did you see the photo of this unicorn? I bet you won't call it a unicorn.
Don't rain on our parade, BB. This
Oh,
is
sorry.
this is a beta version, okay? Let's give these guys some slack. They were pre-funding. Now they've got 100 million to make that unicorn as awesome as you know it can be.
Yeah, and you got the surveillance cameras within your houses all the time.
Okay, now don't get me started on the
Oh,
CCP infiltrating the unicorn.
sorry. Yeah, yeah. It's just quite beautiful with this yellow color, yellow
Hey,
skin.
the
Yeah.
the the Troys and the Greeks that had the Trojan horse, the CCP's got the unicorn. What can I say? They're going to get that thing in your house, and they're going to surveil everything you got going on with the unicorn. The financing led by IDG, or the robotics said in a press release that the money would be used to strengthen its research and development, investment in robotic hardware and software, recruit talent, accelerate product development, and boost technology and product competitiveness. The company said it expects its first robots to enter households in the next 2 years. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to see what they come up with. The next is a company called WeFox, a Berlin-based digital insurer focused on personal insurance products, raised $400 million out of 4.5 billion. So Berlin's got another mega unicorn going on there. Well, they were already at unicorn status, but now they went from 3 billion to 4.5 billion valuation, and here they are. As I said many times, going back a year, the insurance tech space is going to get crazy hot, super crazy hot, because it requires really smart analysis and a lot of application of AIs and some to analyze the data properly, to do the risk assessment properly, to issue you the insurance very perfectly, optimally, to offer individuals optimized insurance based on all of their sweet, sweet, juicy data. And once they can analyze you top to bottom, left to right, and they know how big of a risk you are, just how truly, how likely you are to do stupid shit. Once they can really accurately measure how truly likely you are to fuck stuff up, now they can perfectly tailor the right insurance to you based on how likely you are to screw things up. So that if you're one of those people who never screws anything up, your insurance will be very low, and heaven forbid you're somebody like myself who fucks everything up, then of course you're going to have to pay for that. Um,
The interesting thing will be what metrics they will need in Grab and how transparent they will be because, you don't know what's going on behind and how they're calculating this.
I think they're going to be listening for Siri commands like, Siri, where's my phone again? And if you do that more than 20 times a day, your insurance might go up. So the next one is YouTube begins rolling out picture-in-picture support for all US iOS users. That means all US American iPhone users. But says that the feature requires a premium subscription to work with music videos. Oh boy, the music industry got the better of them yet again. So picture-in-picture support. I feel like I already have that. I do already have a YouTube premium account, so maybe that's why I have that. And I guess the point is I have it, and now they're rolling it out to everybody. Yeah, anyway, it's not that big a deal. I mean, as somebody who has it, I don't know that it's really, I don't know that I would pay for it. The next is from Bloomberg, who says they have sources from Lulu Chen that China decided to rein in Tencent after 2 scandals, including a secret WeChat project to use data to predict new Politburo Standing Committee members. And here we go again with these companies doing shady stuff on the side around your data to do cool, crazy stuff. And so China's cracking down on Tencent because Tencent does have the wherewithal to do some really crazy cool stuff with a lot of data. And that scares the bejesus out of Uncle Xi. That Tencent can do all this cool, crazy shit with all of this data that they're able to collect. And he's thinking, I would like to have that data, and I would like to do cool shit with that data because I'd like to control these folks. And Tencent's like, well, we're just trying to make a buck. We're trying to make a few renminbi off these folks. And so the story says, it's a very, Lulu wrote this piece in a very narrative, colorful novella style it's not really like written like a news article with a headline. So Cheryl pinned it to the top of the room so that you can see that. But it says, the one app became so powerful that it could have posed a real threat to Beijing's rule. The new book, Influence Empire Reveals. Yeah, I recall making that point a few times, that is one of the big reasons that the CCP had to crack down on the big tech companies as they did throughout the 2021 last year. And we saw the headlines on a daily basis. And my God, did they get bludgeoned and beat up in the back alley. Oh my Lord, did those folks get bludgeoned. And the CEOs resigned and took up finger painting. And 1 week after the next, it was another mega high-flying Chinese super unicorn flying through the sky on a rainbow, and next thing you know, it's buried in a dumpster. These things just got wrecked. And at the time, I said it's because the CCP now understands that these companies are very, very powerful with the data they have access to and the things they can do, and the CCP wants control of that, and they need that data. This is like core to what their MO is all about. And now that seems much more clear today, where we sit today. And now people are writing stories about what we discovered last year. And so that's what this article is about, is telling the story of how they got cracked down, why they got cracked down. And the headline says it very well, that the app was too powerful and it posed a threat to Beijing's rule. Totally true. It did. If anything posed a threat to Beijing's rule, it was probably Tencent and Alibaba. And now you know why Jack Ma has not been really heard or seen from since. He's so it's wild times over there. They got too big, too powerful. Anyway, the next digital asset management services called Gnosis Safe rebrands as Safe. Who cares? The next one, crypto lender Vald discloses a $70 million shortfall, listing $330 million in assets and $400 million in liabilities. It says the numbers may not be final as audits are still ongoing. That's just now we're getting into the later stages of this crypto apocalypse.
The books are still simmering; they're not fully cooked yet.
Yeah. Google countersues Match, which is the conglomerate of all the dating sites, which is kind of peculiar. That one company owns all the dating websites, don't you think? That's Match, owned by IAC, Barry Diller. And Google is countersuing them, accusing them of bad faith dealings and breach of contract after Match sued Google in May over alleged monopolistic billing policies. Oh, this is interesting because when Epic Games was in their big fight with Apple and Google over the Play stores and the Apple App Store about how Google interjects themselves as the kind of one and only payment settlement option for app developers. If you build an app like Tinder and you're selling subscriptions, as every app does, to Tinder Pro, then your users are going to have to pay you. Well, Google and Apple interject themselves into that transaction, which kind of sucks because if they're on your website, Tinder.com, and they come to you and they pay, Apple and Google have no piece of that, right? And they would argue, well, these are our users on our devices, thank you very much, who just happen to have discovered you. And Spotify, of all people, says that's a bunch of donkey doo-doo because we have a whole bunch of users all over the place, and we're a very big, well-known brand, and they probably knew about us before they got on your iPhone or Android phone anyways. So why are you pushing yourself into the middle to take a 30% cut every month of this transaction? That's a bunch of nonsense. And that's one of the biggest court cases in tech, last year and this year. And when Epic agreed with Spotify, and they kind of joined forces legally, and so did Match. Match jumped into that. And so when the court case happened, it was called Epic versus Apple, was the official name of that thing. And when they, went to court, Match made a bunch of was on the stand as a witness to testify to the egregious behaviors of Apple and Google. And so Google didn't like that, as you might understand. So now Google's countersuing Match, accusing it of bad faith dealings and breach of contract after Match sued Google in May over alleged monopolistic billing policies, which is all tied to the whole massive Epic versus Apple Google with their friends.
Hey Tyler, I don't think Match owns all the dating sites. By the way, they own Tinder, and there was a whole issue with Tinder litigation. They just got resolved, dating from the early days when Tinder got started, because that was like it was part of like an incubator, thing that IAC did or something. So, but I mean, there's a whole bunch of other dating sites. Like I know, like Bumble is owned by Blackstone or something.
Yep.
Match doesn't own all of them.
They own Tinder, Match, Hinge, Meetic, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, Our Time, Azar, and
They
Hakuna.
own all of those, really? I didn't know they own all of those. Okay, I'll stand corrected. I know they don't own Bumble, so maybe
Yeah,
there's one they don't own.
I would still call Bumble a startup. It came out of Tinder. That's one of the original co-founders of Tinder. And Tinder is owned by Match. But there's another one that isn't. I'm trying to remember that. To your point, they don't own all of them. I'm trying to remember. You're right about Bumble. There's another one as well. It escapes me though. A substantial one. Oh, Grinder. You know Grinder, right, kid? Anyway,
I've heard of it.
you've heard, right. So the next one is a look at the dispute between satellite internet providers like SpaceX and Dish, as both lobby the FCC over wireless frequencies above 12 gigahertz. So there's obviously no one's going to let $1 billion go down without a fight. So let alone 10 billion, let alone 100 billion. It's never smooth sailing when there's $100 billion opportunity. Rest assured on that one, my friends. If you find out a way to make a straight shot to getting anything more than $1 billion, you're going to have other people try and get in the middle of that and get in the way of that and start, rocking the boat and all this. So that's just natural. But let's see how that shakes out. We'll be watching that drama from the sidelines. Global Foundries plans to build a 5.7 billion euro chip factory in France with full capacity by 2026. Good for them. What else? Any other of these? GameStop launches its NFT marketplace in beta. If Amay's still with us, she tends to drop out after the first hour. But the GameStop, was part of the whole Wall Street Bets thing. And then they secretly kind of announced they were going to do something with NFTs back in the old days when NFTs were a hot thing. You guys remember those days back in? Geez, man, seems like yesterday. But I mean, that was the old times back in 2021 when NFTs were so hot back then. You guys have no idea. Let me tell you, I was around back then when those things were hot, and boy, was it crazy. And anyway, so GameStop, it takes 9 months to build something significant. And if you're chasing the crowd on the NFTs, well, now you end up in a kind of precarious, somewhat embarrassing situation that GameStop finds themselves in, because they started building an NFT thing 9 months ago when it was, lava hot, and now it's cooled down. And now they showed up to the party and the cops have already showed up. So there you go.
So Tyler,
Hmm.
I sort of have a thought on this.
Go ahead.
As far as NFTs are concerned, one of the big not controversies, one of the big concerns or questions that everybody has is where's the utility? What exactly are we getting out of this? Aside from you're buying something, art, let's say, because that's what for the last year's worth of NFT hype has all been about, is within the art community. Now, as we're getting, I hate to say more mature, it's only been a year plus. So it's actually been a lot longer than that, but that a larger part of the population has discovered NFTs. But in terms of the utility of NFTs, one of the things that I've been in a lot of discussions with people about is in regards to the utility of these things. Exactly what are you going to use it for? What are these? Well, what's built into the smart contract? And one of the things is that you need an existing community to really delve into. And so marketplaces based off of communities like the gaming community, like social media communities, where you're giving an existing community an ability to sell into itself or trade into itself or leverage that existing community is probably a better place to start. So the art community obviously has already seen their sort of heyday, let's say, and hopefully that continues because that is and has been rather lucrative, as well as given a lot of smaller artists an avenue to sell and to showcase their art. But in terms of the gaming community, I'm a little concerned, or I think a lot of people are concerned, because gamers have a problem with how NFTs will start to allow those without skill to level up in the gaming world in a way that hasn't been allowed before. And I'm not a gamer, so I'm trying to understand where the pushback comes from in terms of NFTs, because they don't want people buying into a position where just because you have money you can buy into a position in a game that before you had to and have skill to get to. Does that make sense?
It does.
Can you add
Okay.
add to skill the experience and the time and the effort? You can beat Candy Crush if you spend enough time on it.
Uh, uh, this hurts my head.
Sorry, Ben, soon.
Um, no, it's cool. I was going to yawn, not, but I couldn't do it because seemed like I was yawning about what your actually thoughtful and good contribution rather than the freaking topic. Does this sound familiar? This is the thing that's not better than the other thing, alternatives that are out there, like a ticket or an email, that you can only sell to your friends. Is this not repeated in the past with multi-level marketing companies? There's a reason you can only sell it to your friends is because it has no actual benefits over the true open market alternatives, like a ticket or an email or a website that sends you a license for something or whatever else. It's clear that's clear if you look at the technicals of it. You don't have to get very far into it at all. I just don't know how big companies have failed to do their due diligence here. And also, it's another one of these systems where there's a lot of people involved, none of which necessarily have bad intentions or are trying to be evil, but the system as a whole is insidious. Per most, not all, I got a lot of kickback last time I said all MLMs are like this, but most MLMs, when viewed as a black box over a long period of time, are a way of exchanging social capital, existing social capital, for money for the people early on in the system. It's the same thing. Anyway,
Raises a
boring.
good question. Can I sell Amway through an NFT?
That's like a double-barreled shotgun. That is. That's
So the there's another couple of really interesting ones that I just found. One is that the Uber, the leak, the massive Uber leak that just happened of 124,000 files, which revealed, quote unquote, how the egregious extremes to how Uber um, played in politics with Macron and blah blah blah. And now the leaker has come forward, named Mark McGann, who led Uber's lobbying in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And he says Uber flouted laws and sold a lie. So if you can pin that one, Cheryl.
Just
Mark
a
McGann,
minute.
a career lobbyist who led Uber's efforts to win over governments across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, has come forward to identify himself as the source who leaked more than 124,000 company files to The Guardian about yesterday. He decided to speak out because he believes Uber knowingly flouted laws in dozens of countries and misled people about the benefits to drivers of the company's gig economy model. He acknowledges he was part of Uber's top team at the time and is not without blame for the conduct he describes. In an exclusive interview with The Guardian, he said he was partly motivated by remorse. Quote, I am partly responsible. I was the one talking to governments. I was the one pushing this with the media. I was the one telling people that they should change the rules because drivers were going to benefit and people were going to get so much economic opportunity. When that turned out not to be the case, we had actually sold people a lie. How can you have a clear conscience if you don't stand up and own your contribution to how people are being treated today? So he was there between 2014 and 2016. The heart of discussions taken at the highest levels of the company during the period in which it was forcing its way into markets in violation of tax licensing laws. He oversaw Uber's attempts to persuade governments to change taxi regulations and create a more favorable business environment in more than 40 countries. He says the ease with which Uber penetrated the highest echelons of power in countries such as the UK, France, and Russia was intoxicating but also deeply unfair and anti-democratic. In his wide-ranging interview, he detailed the personal journey that led him to leak the data years after leaving Uber. Quote, I regret being part of a group of people which massaged the facts to earn the trust of drivers, of consumers, and of political elites. I should have shown more common sense and pushed harder to stop the craziness. It is my duty to now speak up and help governments and parliamentarians right some fundamental wrongs. Morally, I had no choice in the matter. Any thoughts on that one?
So, Tyler, this is just a revelation in terms of systemic corruptions and how different governments are just being swayed by lobbyists in their favor, disregarding people's well being. This person admits, yes, that's a good thing, but the fact that they use $9 million of the money to create these. Pathways to change the laws for their favor is an example of how big companies, pharma companies, tech giants use their money and power to change the laws of any government in their favor. Isn't that a systemic issue? How can that be prevented? Because this story is not just only with Uber. Many other companies have done that in the past. So why the governments allow such things? Who are the people who take all this money and then decide against the people?
Well, you raise an interesting point, which is the governments are equally, potentially more complicit in this drama.
Yes, yes. Why are they allowing these lobbyists and this $9 million that just Uber spent? Imagine all
Yeah,
the
Uber's
money
not
they spent
alone.
on
You
other
think you
companies.
think Uber's the only company that did this?
No,
No,
I
all
don't think
companies are
so.
doing this, and that's the point. The point is, this is how the sausage gets made, right? So, uh, what he's suggesting here is potentially far bigger than Uber. It's that governments, and he names the names of the governments. Shouldn't the governments be quite embarrassed as well? I would say so, and we all know that they should. And yeah, shouldn't he and every professional relationship he's ever had come out into the sunlight and beg for forgiveness and make a documentary about the whole process of how uh, how the sausage gets made.
So Tyler, there was a room that I think Alexandra did yesterday. I mean, there's probably other people on this thing right now that were in that room too, that discussed this whole Uber thing. And a point that I made, that some other people made too, by the way, specifically in regards to this situation. If you know the history of the taxi cab industry, and particularly in certain markets like New York, where I'm from, that wasn't exactly like a clean industry itself. Okay, you basically had a monopoly, that was also based on who's giving money to politicians and deals with unions. I mean, so you basically, you have like the pot calling the kettle black or something here. I mean, there's no clean hands in any of this. And I think some of the governments probably just looked at this and said, you know what, the stranglehold that the medallion holders have, which is like an artificial constraint, isn't right either. So if this young company has a way of using technology to change change everything, maybe we should give them a chance. I mean, yeah, they technically should have changed the rules in advance, but you know what, they probably wouldn't have gotten it done, because could you imagine, this is what scenario I raised, if the Uber people or the Lyft people, whoever had these technology ideas, had gone to elected officials and said, we don't have a company yet, but we have a concept, and we still need to go raise money from VCs and whatever, but we have this concept, but it may not be legal, so we would like you to change the laws to allow us to do this, or to deem us a technology service and not a livery service, which is pretty much how they got into this. They basically, when they started operating, made the claim they weren't a livery service, but a technology service. And of course, the drivers were probably operating as an illegal livery service, but the government wasn't going to really go after independent drivers, most likely. So I just think it's a very difficult situation, because the fact is that, the government being so involved in all of this probably is the problem. Whether it was the original system with medallions, or it's this, this is what happens when there's not a free market, and the government's deciding winners and losers. And I'll just leave it there.
So, very good point, Ken, that the pre-existing system prior to Uber were itself plagued with many different ethical issues. Yes, but that's the job of the government and the people who are in charge of our well-being to make sure that that kind of stuff is not happening. Just changing hands and implementing the similar kind of exploitation in a different way, changing the laws just for their own pocket lining. The problem here is on a bigger, huge level. That's why I am, kind of bringing this up. The systemic issue of getting money from the lobbyist, changing the laws just because they received the money and got their cut in it, disregarding how it's going to impact on a bigger scale, on large number of people. And that is the problem. Companies keep on repeating these behaviors because governments are allowing these behaviors. So, what are the loopholes they are exploiting, and how do we change these systems? That's the bigger problem. This person here coming out and admitting is a good thing, but at the same time, Uber is not the only company. It's not like that they replace Medallion with a good system. They are not naive. They have laws and lawyers and big think tanks. They could have seen the issue was still there, but they deliberately took the money and continued with this.
So, Aaron, to answer your question, at least in the United States, and I'm not going to be able to answer what because I don't know the political campaign financials in other countries. In the United States, you have two issues. One is Citizens United, which is a Supreme Court decision that allows basically, unlimited corporate donations to politicians. But even before we had that, the problem is actually the people ourselves, because most American people, they oppose public financing of campaigns. So if you don't have public financing of campaigns, you're going to have private financing of campaigns. And until people understand that concept, that the private financing of campaigns is what leads to all this, but they don't. I'm just telling you that most people's knee jerk reaction is, I don't want my tax dollars going to political campaigns. Okay, fine. Therefore, there'll be private donations and special interest to finance campaigns, and there's no way. And ultimately, the people have control of this in the United States if they want to take control of it, but they don't want to. They don't seem interested in this issue. They never have, or they, they oppose the reforms. So, I mean, I don't think this is ever going to change in my lifetime at this point. So, and so anyway, I'm done speaking. Thanks.
Okay. Um, we covered the Apple Car yesterday, that story. Facebook launches something called Sphere, an open source AI knowledge tool based on 134 million public web pages. Wikipedia is Sphere's first user, is using Sphere to verify article citations on Wikipedia. An open source AI knowledge tool called Sphere from Meta. And WhatsApp rolls out the ability for users to react to messages with any emoji. After adding the ability to react with the default 6 emojis back in May, now you can have the whole enchilada full of emojis to respond to any message in WhatsApp. That's cool. And Apple is debuting the iOS 16 public beta with the lock screen. That means it's almost ready. So we're probably 2 weeks away when it gets to this point, when they get to the first public beta. 3 weeks. Okay, so those are your big boring headlines today. Now we got the tweets, as we always do, since we met last time. Did anyone find a particularly thought-provoking tweet that they want to share? Nobody had a interesting tweet to share? I got a whole bunch of tweets right here that everybody shared.
Did you cover the James Webb telescope's a new
Not yet.
picture that arrived yesterday?
Not yet.
Oh my
Please
God!
do.
We did.
Oh, you did already?
Yeah, we did. We did it a bit at the top of the show, but I mean, it's totally worth repeating. And they just released a whole bunch of
Yeah,
new
because
images.
that's what I
Yeah,
was going
more
to say.
came.
Sorry, Dr. Fran and Francine,
Oh.
that they just released the new images today. Yesterday was the first one. Since the James Webb Telescope has been launched, first of all, it's just an image to behold, like the human potential to create such an amazing structure in space that is now sending us pictures from so far of the distance that we can't even imagine. I mean, at least I can't imagine, from the beginning of the universe. And the details of these pictures are just astonishing. I would suggest to use like a larger screen to, at least enjoy the proper resolution. And the pictures today are just so phenomenal. I can't even get over the fact that we are witnessing such a thing in our lifetime. The images of these different galaxies around us and billions of stars, and the clarity with which we can see that now. Plus, James Webb is an amazing, technological marvel. So just look into that. Look at the way the mirrors are set up and how it survived a little bit of a micro meteorite shower, and damage was even with that. It was able to send this image. It took a long time for the image to arrive here, and the NASA's website have these images available for anyone to see.
Okay. The tweet that I had from Saudamini that the UK tech industry plans to add an estimated 15,000 jobs this year. Tech industry workers account for 6.3% of total UK workforce. Okay, so retweeting that for everyone who wants it at our Twitter account, TNATW, and then Microsoft job cuts announced in structural adjustment. Microsoft intends to grow headcount in the current fiscal year, but also announcing job cuts in their structural adjustment. Gee, I wonder if they're going to cut their weakest 5 to 10%, like every other company on the planet. Tech companies, anyways. Evan found a really interesting one about a Honda scooter, and what I mean, like a micro mobility scooter, like a Bird or Lime, or I don't. Depending on where you live, you have these two-wheeled electric scooters that people leave laying around on the sidewalks. Honda has built one, but it's a bit unique in that it has three wheels. It basically looks like a normal electric scooter, except it has two rear wheels, so that uh, you're less likely to fall over. So if you're challenged with balance, if you have a bad sense of balance, or the thought of riding a two-wheeled vehicle scares you, then you might want to check out the new Honda three-wheeled scooter. Does
Good
it?
time to also remind people that you only really need one wheel. If you're into electric unicycles, then that is the most compact, most efficient way to travel.
So this is a self-balancing scooter. It's called the Striemo, to improve rider safety on the road. And it's self-balancing. You don't even need to use your hands, as one of the people in the video demonstrates. Very clever. Very clever. So, Dr. Francine, I found the one that you shared about Oracle to build sovereign cloud regions in the EU.
Good.
The cloud giant will launch the first two regions in Germany and Spain.
I
And this,
am guessing that the regulations are so different in every country in the EU that Oracle finally decided, and of course it's big enough to a big enough company to do that, that it should just go and do whatever it needs to do for each separate country.
right, well, to summarize, the countries have come to understand that data is very valuable, just like people and money, and they want to control the data that's happening within their boundaries or borders. And just like they want to know exactly who is going in and out of their borders, and they want to know the money going in and out of the borders, now they want to know what data is going in and out of their borders. And when it's inside of their borders, they want to control that stuff. And
So it's sovereignty. It's
right,
basically it becomes part of your
we
sovereignty.
own that data, just like we own the land and the water and the air. We own the data that's going on. Now the state is taking control of all the data. And so now they're telling big tech and you, oh no, that's not your data. It's happening in our sovereign territory. So it's ours. Didn't you read the terms of agreement at the hospital when you were born that you signed? Our data. We own that. So that whole is a really massive mind shift. And I first became introduced to the concept from a friend who works at Amazon Web Services, Amazon Cloud, and he worked on the team out that covered the Nordics. But we were sharing a ride from the airport, CDG, Charles de Gaulle Airport, into Paris. And I said, "What are you doing in Paris?" And he says, "Well, I'm going to meet the government." I said, "Well, why are you meeting the French government?" He says, "Sovereign clouds," and this is Jesus, 6, 7 years ago. And I said, "What the heck is a sovereign cloud?" And he just explained it, just as I explained it to you, that France was kind of ahead of the curve on understanding this, and Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Oracle and all the cloud providers were going to be racing, jockeying for a position to provide and enable their grand ambitions of having sovereign clouds. So get ready, because it's going to fundamentally change things when Google has to, or let's say Facebook has to participate in Germany's sovereign cloud on the, and Germany can dictate the terms as to how it's. By the way, kudos to China for really pioneering this. China's had this for a very long time, and every tech company, from outside of China knows it very, very well. Just how much control China has of everything that goes on in their. And you could call it their own internet, is what you could call theirs. The difference is in the West, the sovereign clouds will have interoperability and kind of transfer of data. By the way, a deal was just announced yesterday between Korea and who? Italy? Korea made a deal with somebody that there would be kind of free flow of data between their two sovereign clouds. It was a European country, Spain or something. Anyway, just a really interesting new concept of how
I
just
would
in
have guessed Spain before I'd guessed Italy. Korea seems to have a better relationship with Spain. You might be thinking the latter.
but just
Yeah,
in the
Spain.
it was
I think
Spain.
it.
It doesn't
Yes,
matter.
I think it's Spain. Yeah, it says
Yeah,
imports from South Korea and imports. It's to the.
But the point is that they, in the same way that they allow free trade between countries, again, oh, great example. Anything that goes in or out of their borders, they feel they have the right to tax. So if you're trying to bring in drones from China into the US says, no, you can't do that. Or, okay, we allow it, but we're going to tax you 10, 20, 30, 40%, whatever they feel like, on every item. And every item has a different tax rate or whatever. The flow of goods going in and out of their borders, they want to control, and people going in and out of their borders, and now data. And you can have free trade between countries, and you can have free data exchange between countries. Well, geez, thanks. Thanks so
So
much. That's
sorry,
what
sorry, Tyler is a correction. Actually, it's a UK sales data pact with the South Korea.
UK, Korea.
Yes, UK with South Korea.
that makes perfect sense because there is a great relationship between UK and Korea.
Okay.
Tyler, just to a little bit dissected. So let's say there is a startup who's actually working in a UK, or more specifically, let's say France. And, they're building this portal where they're collecting all this data, which is going to have the, first name, last name, date of birth, all the rest of it. Now, they have to actually comply with the GDPR. So, they go for the private cloud, sovereign cloud option, which is going to be in that country. All fine. For these kind of situations where you have the Facebook and the Google, now look at the Google Maps, for instance. Now, how the Google would comply with that, where somebody is actually using Google Map, and these guys have actually, let's say, that person, even in the cognito mode, like what we were discussing a minute ago, that Google has that information that this is that person, and now more and more people are putting the real, details like in terms of the date of birth and their addresses and all that because of the actual Google Home. So their fictitious details are getting into the, because of the Google Pay and all that. Same goes with Apple. Now all that info, I mean, how these bigger giants, which is going to be China is exception because of the Baidu and all the rest of it, but for the rest of the world, I mean, how is it going to be even possible for Germany or like France or UK to actually monitor that kind of traffic, that their citizens are actually going out of it, where they're going to be traveling, what data is holding where? I mean, this is not practically possible to actually just go and comply with the GDPR on that level, for instance, and go have a sovereign cloud, which where you have like a one bottleneck that all the traffic is on the sovereign level or that country bottleneck. It's just simply not practical. What's your take?
It's challenging. I agree. It strains the the plausibility. I struggle to imagine as well how this will play out. But they have tremendous will to do this for obvious reasons. So I mean, I imagine it's going to happen. Uh, the yeah, I'm curious myself.
And one more thing, like let's take this typical example, for instance, what happened in India. So let's say India has a sovereign cloud, and it just not just tell the Twitter to actually delete the tweets,
Right,
but also hold all those tweets in on Indian sovereign cloud. I
right.
mean, how is that happen? Yeah.
Well, I mean that's why I said China is one to look at. China, I think, can do that. Uh, so
Yeah,
they're
but you have to. That means we just saw the news that the Shanghai like the 1 billion dead of their all citizens, and what's the purpose of it? I mean, what's the meaning if you have this sovereign cloud and like everything? So I mean, you have to secure. and have this ability to secure the data before you employ it all nationwide. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so BB
So
found.
you're saying that if it's all in one area, that way then it's more susceptible to breach, so they'd have to find ways to secure it. Is that what you're saying, BB?
Yeah, but I mean, because this Shanghai police station's data actually it contains almost everyone in China because it's 1 billion citizens data, and there's some suspicion around this data as well because China always declare they have 1.4 billion people, but by this data, it's just around 1 billion. So there is another, side note about this one. But if you, I mean, because we are talking about the sovereign cloud sovereign data, but you have to, if you are people, just like Tyler said, if it's maybe the Sweden government, then he will trust more to give our own data to them, and then it. But of course, if it's forced, we have no choice. But if we have the choice, we should have this options if we know it's secure or not. Yeah.
Okay, so Tina found one from AP News about an over-the-counter birth control drug maker seeks FDA approval. For the first time, a pharmaceutical company has asked for permission to sell birth control pills over the counter in the United States. And
Well, according to
Didn't
Roe
we talk
versus
about
Wade,
this
isn't that
before also?
Yes, we did.
okay, well there it is. Thailand is close to approving chemical castration for sex offenders. Certain sex offenders could be given the option to have injections to reduce testosterone levels in return for shorter jail time. Oh, wow. That's wild.
they're giving them options, free will?
Wow.
Very creative.
Yeah.
Very,
Be
very
Maybe
careful,
creative.
you're not-
Tyler.
yeah, I just want to hear Tyler's opinions upon this.
Well, what are they going to do with toxic females? Are they going to inject them too?
Well, if it lowers their testosterone, but that's assuming that would be interesting to see because levels of testosterone have both physiological and psychological effects, right? John might be good to jump in here. And
It does affect the aggression. Yeah.
right, aggression is one of those effects. Precisely the point I was getting to. Risk taking is one of those effects, which is why ostensibly men take more risks than women, and women prefer to drive a little bit slower, be a little safer in most circumstances. And you see men exhibiting. By the way, when you see men exhibiting risky behaviors, it demonstrates they have high testosterone, which is a perceived subconsciously a very strong signal of uh, somebody who can replicate. So the but the it's safe to assume that people in prison have higher testosterone rates.
And other stress-based hormones
Sure,
along with.
sure. But I mean both men and women, and I would think that would be a really interesting study to see the results of the testosterone levels of men and women in prisons to see if they're higher than the average. I would bet that they are significantly. And the idea of giving people, and it could apply to both. I don't know that this is a male female issue at all.
Yes, I
Yes.
agree. They do have men, tend to have, of course, biologically different hormonal composition and levels, and testosterone is
Right.
definitely way
Well,
higher in men. But the females who are on that spectrum may have higher levels of testosterone because it does affect the aggressive mood, and stress-based hormone can also affect your mood. Plus, some psychological underlying issues can affect as well. So it's a complex situation. But this kind of a hormone-based therapy for a reduction of uh, this sexually aggressive behavior, yeah, maybe they're onto something.
What makes it weird from a Thai perspective, and I'm speaking as a non-Thai who's lived in Thailand for many, many years, that Thais already in how do I say this?
Doesn't that contradict their desires to sort of reduce effeminate men?
I was getting to the the effeminateness of both men and women in Thailand. That it's Thai men are characterized as being quite effeminate already. That's what's interesting to me about this concept. In anyway, interesting, interesting, interesting idea. So you're right. If it's the person's choice, I mean, it's one thing. Obviously, it would be egregious if it was forced, but the idea that it's voluntary really makes it a really interesting, debatable point.
Although one could potentially say there's some coercion there, right, with the reduction of time.
Yeah, wild. Anyway, BB found one that Honda's key fob flaw lets hackers remotely unlock and start Honda cars. The hackers showed the flaw, allowed them to unlock vulnerable cars and start the engines. Okay, good times. BB found this one from TechCrunch that Walmart agrees to order 4,500 EVs called canoes for last mile delivery. So Walmart doesn't want to get left behind by Amazon. A spokesperson disclosed that these are binding pre-orders, beginning with Canoe's branded lifestyle delivery vehicle. Under the agreement, Walmart has an option to buy 10,000 canoes for last mile delivery. EVs. Oh, shoot, I forgot to read.
Wal- Walmart is really feeling threatened. I mean, I've lately experienced it like as a consumer. Like, I mean, I just tried to actually study it, the whole pattern that they making certain decisions. They're really fighting for their life right now. They realize this, that if they don't take appropriate measures right now, they're going to be history. And I think there is a realization that, it's not just about the actual delivery part, but also, they have to fundamentally come up with some unique thing which they can actually counter Amazon with. And the way Amazon is now progressing is everything is new, like in terms of like not just the focus on the customer itself, but in terms of the actual, you know crowd sourcing. It is the main technique they have actually dealt with. I mean, it's not just simply everything they are actually shipping themselves. Like, I mean, it's all crowdsourced, thousands and millions of like accounts. And Walmart has to come up with some unique approach which they can actually counter with. I mean, so many people I've recently, like in my own close circle, I've you know um, saw their shopping pattern change drastically. I mean, they used to actually walk in and into the 24-hour, 2 o'clock in the morning when they have the time, just go there, like pick up, browse through the aisles and everything. But I mean, all of them are changing. It's just in the last couple of years, especially after the COVID, it's just like whole shopping pattern has changed. And because of this next day delivery, it's just it's just so feasible. It's just like everything is just so you know you don't have to plan anything. You just, even the grocery itself. So I think Walmart has to do very fast, something very quickly, and something very new, not just copying the Amazon, but in order to survive.
Okay. Sautamini found one that TikTok will teach small businesses how to build a following. It says companies have been transformed after using it. So TikTok wants to get into business. Here it comes. By the way, those of us who've been around for more than a minute will remember Twitter before the companies were on there. And then all of the companies adding the Twitter logos to everything. And then every company's on Twitter, with the exception of Apple, it seems. and now every TikTok's going after small business. Why? Well, if they
Maybe
allow
they
them,
have, oh, sorry.
if they allow them to sell stuff, let's see.
I mean,
I
the
mean,
setback is social commerce. Maybe, yeah,
what would be
let
the
them sell.
point of a cake shop on or a fishing supply store or a shoe store on TikTok promoting themselves to what? Send you to Amazon? You think TikTok's gonna stand by and give away all that money when they can build a little place for you to sell the shit right on TikTok and take a little piece of that?
But this feels more like a Facebook's ad model that you have these options to choose who, what age, uh, what gender you like your ads to be seen. So because before this, I think TikTok doesn't have this kind self-trained programs to promote this method.
Okay. So the next one is also about TikTok. I'm sorry, Amazon. Amazon issued 13,000 disciplinary notices at a single U.S. warehouse. Amazon worker Gerald Bryson had hand counted thousands of items in his warehouse's inventory over 3 days. Oh, it's a big long story from Reuters, so I'm going to retweet that. That's a catchy headline. 13,000 disciplinary notices at a single warehouse. That's a good clickbait headline. I'm itching to click that one. The next one is from
I
BB.
actually read that article, Tyler. So I mean, I just forgot. I mean, I'm just early in the morning where I am, so I actually forgot it. But I think I read it yesterday. It is
Okay.
an interesting story. I don't remember the story, but it's interesting.
Okay. The next is from BB. That from the BBC. You did it, BB. You got another BBC article in there. So Iran plans to supply Russia. As you might have heard, Russia is invading Ukraine, and a lot of countries are supporting Ukraine. And as of yet, there's not a lot of countries really supporting Russia. But here comes Iran saying Iran plans to supply Russia with potentially hundreds of drones for its war in Ukraine, some with combat capabilities. And it's important to say that it's the source of this from the BBC. The BBC says this is coming from a U.S. official. Okay, well, what does now that that's out in the public? No doubt, if that's not true, Iran will be very fast to say that you're wrong. But there's more to this story because the big picture going on, even bigger than the Russia Ukraine, is who is going to be taking Russia. Russia and China are clearly cooperating. There was a headline I skipped about how Russia's adding 5G now, and they're using Huawei for that because they don't have a choice because all the other options are now no longer legal to do business in Russia. But anyway, the Russia and China are rather tightly in cahoots, and then the question is who's going to join the China-Russia alliance in the new world order that's taking shape. And as I said multiple times over many months, I've mentioned Iran as kind of the third leg on that stool in some degree, and for very important reason because they've got shit tons of oil that China desperately needs, and that's an understatement. So, but to see things like this with Iran supporting Russia with in this war is it really saddens me because many of my very closest friends are Persian American, Persian Swede, or what have you, and it just it saddens me because I feel like in another parallel universe, you know, Iran could easily have been very friendly with the West, and it it just kind of saddens me anyway. So,
Hey, hey Tyler, if I could just go back to the Amazon thing, and maybe I conflated stories. There was a story the other day that I read about a guy who works for Amazon in California as an at-home worker who's suing them because California's got a state law that, you know, if you're an at-home worker, the employer's got to cover all your legitimate business expenses. So he wants Amazon to pay his electric bill and his house. So I mean, so that was the one that I was probably thinking of. So I asked Cheryl to send me whatever the article was that you had because I'm that was the one I remember actually.
so someone in the audience by the name of Reza has their hand up, and that could be a Persian name. So I want to see if Reza has a comment about the Iran Russia drone thing. So I've invited Reza on stage. So if you see a new person without a photo, against my better judgment,
Oh,
hopefully.
you're taking risks today. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm
Risky behavior, Tyler.
super risky behavior here, but
You're having a testosterone spike, Tyler.
it
While
must.
they're on the way up, by the way, we're starting in 4 minutes. We're
Wow.
starting a
Ah,
sustainability room this time on inflation. FYI.
perfect. Go ahead and get it started because that was my last tweet. The Yep. Spotify introduces real-time lyrics on Google Nest Hub, and yep, the rest seem kind of repetitive at this point. So my apologies if I didn't get to your tweet, but we'll get to it tomorrow. And for now, we're going to jump over to Ben's room. Cheryl, maybe
Yeah,
you could pin it
yeah,
at
it's been on top of the room already. So just click
perfect.
on it and you can join us. The
Hey,
title
Awesome.
hey,
is
hey,
What
hey,
If
hey,
We Are Responsible for Inflation? Maybe Ken should join us too.
I was going to actually, I don't know if Ben's still on stage. I actually have somewhere to go, but I'll try to do it from my car. But I was actually going to be curious whether he's going to talk about like interest rate futures and stuff, because I mean the way that you protect yourself from inflation is so different than all the other sustainability things that he's talking about. It's completely different. I mean, I don't even know if it's that related, but okay, I'll see what
Okay.
I'll join the room.
Okay. He's not here now. I just hope he don't talk about Bitcoin.
Okay.